Welcome to the Tattoo Marketing Podcast. On this week's episode, we're talking to Matt Hodel, who is a shop owner and has been tattooing since 1995. He also owns Jackpot Coaching, which is a community of tattoo artists and shop owners that he's trying to help bring into the 21st century and helping them with marketing, communication, time management, finances, a lot of stuff that gets ignored in the industry. Absolutely great episode. A ton of really, really good information around a lot of the topics we just talked about. So enjoy.
So my name's Matt Hodel. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been tattooing since 1995. I got into the business with an apprenticeship, started at Iron Age under Brad Fink and the whole crew there. Kind of was like the unofficial apprentice where everyone fed me stuff, right? So like in the morning, one person would say, pull your lines. In the evening, someone would say, push your lines. And then Brad would say, I didn't tell you to do it like that. And then so it was just constant, I don't know, it's almost like a bipolar way of learning how to tattoo. But the greatest thing about that early experience was, I was just talking about this the other day, that tattooing was such an adventure back then because there was no map. There was no 10,000 foot view of tattooing. So we all were getting our little pieces of information and then trading notes and slowly trying to build this view of what tattoo landscape looked like. But since then, I was able to travel quite a bit because of the lack of information. Again, we didn't have the internet. This is 1995. This is 96 going into 2000. And so if I met someone who I thought was I want to learn from them, what I mean by meet them. If I saw someone in a magazine, I was like, wow, that person's killing it. I would write them a letter, start a rapport, and then ask if I could go work with them. And usually that worked out if I had a reference, well, I know so-and-so, can I come work with you? And that's how we got information back then, was literally getting out of your city and going and sitting with someone else and taking notes. And that meant getting tattooed by a lot of people so that they'd open up to you. And this took me through Brazil, took me through Japan. I got to tattoo in Japan, 97 and 98. Well, the first trip was me and Brad went there to get tattooed by Sabado. And then the next year we came back and worked in 1998. Real eye-opener. Had an apartment over there. It was kind of fun. Took me through Europe quite a bit and all throughout the States. And so I think what that ended up doing for me is I was really thirsty. I mean, I don't think I've ever stopped being a student of the craft, but definitely right then and there, I hated the fact that I didn't know something. So I was constantly trying to figure out new things. And the weird thing is that when we left the States, the business models were so different. I would be like, how is this happening? How is this working? How are you not trying to tattoo as many people in a given day as possible? Where I remember tattooing in Japan, we only had 2 appointments a day. It was the same in Europe. They'd only set you up maybe 3 appointments a day. And a lot of these, the service side of it, the customer service side of it, all of that, I think just when I was able to open up my own shop here in St. Louis a couple of years back, I was able to incorporate this whole mix of business models into what I thought would be the most successful for the way I wanted to tattoo, which is really being more centric on the client themselves and optimizing tattooing rather than running to capacity and trying to tattoo as many people as possible. But then, to fast forward, I used my shop to try to help tattoo artists. And I realized one thing, Jesse, is unwanted advice is called criticism. And I did a lot of that. And I thought I could help so many people because they just didn't know. So I could just jump in and find out what their problem was and just start dumping about what I thought through my life experience. And I totally ignored what their systems they were working with were, what their values were, what they thought was important to them. And then that led me to kind of go back and how do you become a coach? Which went down a whole nother rabbit hole, which I ended up getting some certification and really understanding how to create a coaching experience where you walk alongside your client rather than pulling them and being like, no, look here, this is what you need to do. I think one of the biggest things I used to do was hear the first problem I could solve and jump on it. And through learning how to be a coach, I was able to walk alongside them, really listen to their whole story, and try to find out where the true pinch points or the negative, I guess, the pain points were, and then start to address them together rather than me just jumping on them. And so that ended up being like, well, I can help 5 people at a time coaching. I wonder how many I can help in a group meeting. So a little over a year ago, I announced I was going to do these Zoom meetings, and I just threw the Zoom in a chat on Instagram, and people were showing up, like 5 people, 6 people, 9 people. And every Wednesday we would just talk tattoo and talk the business side of things. I thought that was the most important part. Was I really had a pain in my heart seeing people enter tattooing through blurred lines
Mm.
and then quitting because they didn't know how to navigate the business side. And I just thought, man, if people just understood a little bit more of the business basics and stop treating this like such a pirate ship, we're losing a lot of talent because of the culture of tattooing, because the lack of resources, because there is no continuous education. There's a frowned upon viewpoint of like learning, right? Like we have this thing like, you're supposed to learn this way. Okay, how do I do that? I don't know. Like this is,
Yeah.
I think the funniest thing was like the idea that like you're supposed to be apprentice. Tattoo schools are stupid. Okay, well, so I'm supposed to apprentice. Yeah, but all the apprentices out there suck. Okay, why do they suck? They don't get taught right. Okay, now we're back to the beginning. Like, how do we do this? Because we're gonna lose tattooing. We're gonna lose a lot of the integrity. We're gonna lose a lot of the values and the principles because we haven't figured out how to really pass that on to the next generations. So insert jackpot tattoo community, which was what grew out of those Zoom calls. And I think what made our community interesting was it wasn't based around a product or a company. It wasn't like we're the tattooing company and now we like have a tattoo community around our company or whatever. It's not like as a coach, I didn't like have a bunch of products I wanted to sell as a coach and then made a community around it. It was just people who wanted to know more about tattooing. And then I think if it was centric at the beginning around me, it was just because I was the curator, or I was the director. But what's happened now is we have members and we've created these systems and these processes of kind of how to run a meeting and what information we're looking for. And we've started mapping things out and working together. And now it's to the point where I think we have like anywhere from 3 to 5 meetings a week. And I'm not even running them. Like the community is running their own meetings, which I think is the coolest part of it. Like I jump in to make sure there's like some continuity between all the meetings so that if there's a new person, they're not like, well, that Wednesday meeting was weird. I want them to have some continuity. That's why we have the systems in place of meeting disclaimers and kind of like how to run a meeting. But overall, like what's happened is this, and this is the part that was so crazy to me, is that I thought, well, I'm going to start this community. I guess I got to deliver product. Like I've got to talk about business over and over and over again. But really what happens is the community starts to just want to be around each other. Like I almost don't even need to be there for some of the conversations. I'm just a catalyst for people to see their friends every Wednesday night, And then here's the crazy part is that there's people in there with like 30 years tattooing experience. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you need to be here? Like you've did it. Like you have money, you have a shop, everything's going okay with you. And here's why. It's the same reason why I did it is we need purpose in life. We need to turn around and give back to the younger generation and kind of like move away from that. Like we kind of replace the feeling of winning for the feeling of learning. And by giving back, we relearn everything that we did. I mean, if you've ever had a kid and taken them to a park and had a flashback to a slide or a drawing that you might have done as a child that you would have never remembered if you didn't have that moment with that kid, So tattooing is the same way. What's happened is these older generations, they still stay curious, but it's great because they start talking and they start helping out the younger people. So we have a group in there called First Five. That's like kind of designated for anyone with 5 years and under. We've got the main group, which is kind of like the people who are in the thick of it and they're kind of like in a now what situation. And then we have a shop owners group. And that one's really successful because I think being a shop owner might be the loneliest perch to stand on as a tattoo artist because you don't really have a support system. And in our group of a shop owner group, you're in there with like, anywhere from 9 to 15 other shop owners. And me and my friend Clay, we would do a good job of like trying to talk about the pain points that matter to shop owners and then opening it up for discussion so people can share that. And so, yeah, a little bit about myself. What did I cover? 5 minutes there? Am I good? I got 13 minutes. So yeah, that was kind of it in a nutshell of what we're doing over there. And it's a learning process. There's been tattoo clubs or tattoo online communities in the past, but I think what we're trying to do over there is really kind of tie it together from the older generation back to the younger generation and hit all those points,
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you have different like segmented groups for people under 5 years, shop owners, people that have been in the industry a long time. Because, like you said, man, being a shop owner, or really for the most part any kind of business owner, like entrepreneurship is a very, very lonely road, and you're just trying to do your
Mm-hmm.
best, and everybody thinks you have all the answers, and you're like, I have no clue what's happening. So having a group for people like that where they can get feedback and stuff, I think is huge. And again, there's not a lot of resources like that out there for shop owners. As the industry grows, we're seeing more stuff for tattoo artists, and obviously YouTube's huge and stuff like that, but um it's not really community based. And again, there's not really a ton of stuff for shop owners that teaches the business side. Because I mean, when nobody gets into tattooing to learn business, to learn marketing, to learn all that kind of stuff. They do it because they love the art. Unfortunately, that's part of, if you want to be successful, you do need to know the business side. I would say even as much, if not more, than the tattooing side, because that's, there's plenty of shops that pop up every year, especially the last couple of years, and there's plenty that go under that have been around for 5-10 years because the owner didn't know enough about business.
Yeah, let's stay right there really quick. So for the first time ever, tattooing's had to obey the laws of business,
Mhm.
right? There's a saying that it's art and business have the same type of saying you can use. There's rules to business, not to follow, but to avoid disaster. Same with art. There's rules to art, not to follow, but to avoid disaster. For a long time, we had the market cornered. We used scare tactics and stuff to keep other shops from opening up in our markets. I mean, the market was very limited back then. Let's just guess and say if you had a population of 100,000 people, less than 5% are actually going to get tattooed.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was a need to kind of like protect your honey hole as the market grows and tattooing blows up. And this is an interesting side note. Like tattooing started blowing up in the 70s. And, we get Lyle Tuttle on the Rolling Stones and famous people are getting tattooed and it starts to get momentum. But then the 80s happen and we have the AIDS crisis. And what could have been the first explosion on the mainstream of tattooing fell back. And everyone, if you lived through that, everybody was, it was a very big fear of like, how do you actually get AIDS? And so tattooing was definitely like, people didn't know if you could touch someone and get it, right?
Mhm.
So tattooing kind of like went back again. In fact, an older tattoo artist once told me he started tattooing in the 60s. He told me he didn't have his first client until the 80s. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, what's the first time anyone asked me, like, are you washing your hands? They like had requests. Like before that, it was always like, sit down, shut up. So his name is Richie Montgomery, tattoos in New York. He told me that story. But so my point is this, is that when it blows up, we have limited the amount of tattoo shops and the surplus of clients is greater. So now we have a higher demand than the ability to actually process them, right? We could work as inefficiently as we wanted to. All we literally had to do was open the door and start working. And that's what we did, especially at our shop in the 90s. We would sneak in the back just so we could eat lunch before we opened the door because there was already 10 people waiting. What a beautiful time to tattoo when you could just make money by showing up. So then what happens? Slowly, tattoo artists start, or there's only so many tattoo artists can handle that many people. the market gets bigger and bigger. The fringe parts of the mainstream start to be more accepting. And now you got tattoo artists to just fill those roles, right? Now you fast forward to now, where we have something like a 9% growth rate predicted for tattooing every single year for the next 6 or 7 years. Depending on who you ask, Forbes says 3 billion. A private study says $13 billion a year industry. Of that, 1/3 of it is in the retail sector. That means that even if it's in the 3 billion, that means $1 billion a year is being thrown around in tattoo shops just in the retail side. That means getting them. And so now we have a certain amount of normal business sense that we have to do. We have to understand what marketing is. We have to understand what price sensitivity is. We have to understand what customer service is. And we actually have to move away from the product of what we're selling into why we're selling it, like Simon says. And yeah, these are concepts that kind of go against the grain as far as like the old school ways. But it's crazy because when you see people embrace it, you're like, wait a minute. So it's not all about doing big sleeves. All I have to do is actually connect with my clients and show them that our values and our principles line up. And and that's what blows people away, is that we were told for so long, put your head down, work, get good, everything will be okay. And the reality is that it's not really paying off for some people in the long term. They got good, they looked up and they're like, where is everybody? Well, because the landscape changed. Nobody knows you exist because it's just so, I don't know. Maybe they know they exist, or maybe the other thing too is they make it so difficult to get tattooed. Have you ever noticed that? When you're in marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like every time someone complains that it's oversaturated, I do this thing where I try to make an appointment with them. It's impossible.
Yeah.
They're no DMs. Don't call me on a full moon. Like all these rules to engage with them, and it's like in the future, the shops that win are the ones that have the smoothest onboard ramps. There's like a joke, right, that 3 easy steps. And the Business Made Simple guy, he jokes and he says, his name's Donald Miller. He says, you want 3 easy steps to onboard. And the 3 easiest steps in the world were done by Pop-Tarts. Open, warm, eat, like if you can make it that simple. And then we see people tattooing and they're like, read my 92-page manifesto on how to work with me. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, there's no reason I would rather do business with someone who's going to make it that much smoother. So yeah, when it comes to the business side of it, yeah, we're absolutely in a phase where the people who are going to succeed and have a long career are the ones that adhere to at least a little bit of business basic principles.
100%. One, love Donald Miller. Anybody that is looking for good business and marketing advice should look him up. He has some amazing books and a lot of good courses. But 2, yeah, I did a podcast on this probably a month ago about why are you making there's so much friction, so many shops and artists put into just booking an appointment with them. Like, hey, email me, and then the artist doesn't email them back for like 2 weeks. And by that time, they've already got tattooed somewhere else. Like, there's so many friction points. And I think it's, again, just how, 10 years ago you could do that because there were so fewer artists, there were so fewer shops. But like nowadays, it's the people that we see are the most successful are the ones that get back to people immediately, make it super easy to book a consultation or book an appointment. And yeah, just respond to everybody. I was talking with an artist who, he only does large scale black and gray stuff. If you work with him, you're going to be spending $6,000 to $8,000, and he's out of Vallejo, California. That's not a rich area, and he's booked out 5-6 months, but he gets back to everybody immediately, even if it's something he doesn't want to do, just because that person, if someone asks about their experience or if they've heard of this guy and they're like, oh yeah, he just never got back to me. Like, that stuff snowballs very, very quickly. A lot of the times when you look at like shops reviews, if they have negative reviews, it's, hey, I never heard back from this shop. I've tried to contact them like 5 times, or I walked in and nobody even like looked at me or talked to me, and I stood around for 5 minutes and I left. And it's like, everybody says they're hurting. And I know like the economy is not what it was in 2022. But you're also making it so incredibly hard for someone to book a tattoo, which should be fill out this form, call the shop, we'll pick up the phone. Like, it should be extremely simple thing to do.
Yeah, it's I think one of the other things we need to address is the gap
Mhm.
between entry level tattooing and people who actually start putting processes and systems in place. And I would say that in the 90s, if you were just to wing it, you could probably make 60 grand a year being terrible at tattooing, being terrible at customer service. All you had to do was open the doors. But the people who were busting their ass were making 90 grand a year. That's more, 100 grand a year. That's more, but it's only a $30,000 jump, right? It's kind of nominal compared to the amount of work you need to do to make that jump.
Mhm.
What you're seeing now is people who refuse or don't know when they're in that entry level stage, or they're basically doing the minimal requirements to be called a tattoo artist, they're making 30 grand a year. 30 grand a year, which is crazy,
Mhm.
right? And the ones that are applying basic business principles and practices, they're closer to the $80,000 and $90,000 a year. And the ones that are excelling in those things where they understand brand identity and they surround themselves with a team that can work together and help facilitate the onboarding and the booking and create an atmosphere that really understands what the client wants. Those are the $150,000 and $200,000 a year tattoo artists. Now they might be unicorns, right? Like that. I wouldn't say everyone should thrive to be that person. Those people are very unique. But I think the takeaway is that one thing I do is I post these value posts is what I call them on Instagram. And they're nothing more than like me talking to a younger version of myself or me talking to someone who I wish would listen to me, right? It's just a way for me to get something out so I can stop thinking about wishing I could call someone and be like, dude, what are you doing wrong? You know, what the hell? What? So instead I put them on the internet. I don't use it triggers people, but it resonates with people and they'll DM me and I'll say, dude, call me. And I talk to sometimes 4 tattoo artists a week that I've never met before. And I'm really getting a finger on the pulse of what's happening. And it sucks because some of the people that start tattooing when I start tattooing, they're like, if I don't make any money in the next month, I quit.
Mhm.
It's like, how do you get 28 years of experience and not know what to do next? And it's because well, there's a lot of reasons for it. My point is it hurts. It hurts me to hear that because they should be at like a pinnacle. They should be at the golden year of tattooing where it should be less effort, more and more reward at that point, right? Because they should be pros at it. But it's an interesting thing to have such a discrepancy in price, basically by doing the minimum of what's required for you for the business side of things, right?
Yeah. It is very strange, and I mean, while the industry is growing a ton and there's a ton of new people getting into it, I would almost argue that the bar to get booked out has never been lower because you just need to put in like the fundamental stuff to get booked out. Perfect example. I had an apprentice on, first time I've ever had an apprentice on the podcast last week. And by the time this comes out, her podcast will already be out. She has been tattooing on skin since February. And first of all, I'll tell you, like, I would let her tattoo me. Like, I thought she'd been tattooing for at least 5, 6 years. Phenomenal
Mm-hmm.
artist. But she
Mm-hmm.
is in a shop in Vegas with 19 other artists, and she's already booked
Mm-hmm.
out months because she just follows the basic principles of like being super communicative, putting her work out there, actually making like good quality stuff, not just like making posts on Instagram of just her tattoos, not her face. Like she shows her personality in it. And like it's stuff that seems like it should be, everyone should know like that's what you should be doing. But nobody really does it. And again, also super friendly person. But like I said, there's more and more people coming into this industry and it's getting busier and busier. But like I said, I would argue that the bar to actually get booked out has never been lowered. You just need stuff that in any other industry is like the basic, like most basic stuff you would ever do. Like, hey, pick up your phone. Shouldn't be that hard, but we'll see. Like a lot of the shops we work with, or all the shops we work with, we have tracking numbers for, because that's how we record conversions, stuff like that. But we can see the amount of calls that don't get answered during business hours, calls that go to voicemail, and it's got to be about 70%. It's
Sure.
insane. Like, you're spending money on advertising, you're having people call your shop, and then you're not picking it up. What the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Let's look at this really quick. Okay, so we're gonna hear some naysayers. Yeah, but she's probably this, or she's probably got low prices, or she's probably cutthroating, or she's probably not ugly, or whatever. You know what I mean? And that's why she's getting booked up. And let's just kind of like let's look at the texture of what being booked up means. And this is something I try to like when I go through teaching people about acquisition phases. The rules are slightly different for each person in whatever level of career they're in. So in the beginning levels, when I start talking about defining your ideal client, in that beginning phase, especially in the first year, it's anyone with a heartbeat and a checkbook, or I guess nowadays Venmo, right? And where when you get a little bit older and you're trying to like actually like I do large Japanese or I do large black and gray, whatever it is, then you're looking for a specific client so you can book yourself out with that type of tattooing. One of the things I like to talk about when we're building these acquisition phases is you're trying to find clients that have a lifetime value that aren't just transactions. And I think I just want to plug that in really quick of letting people know the difference between a lifetime value client and a transactional client. So again, like we can lower our prices, we can come up with gimmicks, we can do all these things and get booked out. I don't want the emphasis to be just about being booked out. I want the emphasis to be on attracting as many people as you can to the point where you can try to decide what clients give you energy and what clients are the ones you want to work with. There's a resonation there too, right? And so once we do get booked out, like that's great for this young lady, she's booked out, and now her next opportunity is going to be reviewing her clients every 3 months and making a list of A, B, and C and saying A is awesome. They have no price sensitivity. They love everything I do and we get along great. B is a client who I could probably work with to get to an A, or they just might need a little more hand holding. Like they don't give me free reign, but they're cool. They're like just cool. And then C is like, they don't get it. Like it's like they're either backdoor clients, like my sister's cousin's brother knows I tattoo, so now they're on the books. And there's probably a better fit for them out there. They're not bad people. There might just be a better fit. And so I think what I want to point out is we can get you booked up. That's not hard. Getting you booked up is actually really easy. There's a couple of things you can do. And I'm sure, Jesse, you've talked about these things on your podcast, easier onboarding and just a better understanding of the acquisition phase. Once you get people booked up, I think it's important to really start to audit your clientele so that you can create lifetime value so you can have a long career, not just get it while the getting's good. But at this point in time, like I'm almost 30 years in, I got 29 years of tattooing plus a few days. And I'm tattooing people's grandkids. I'm tattooing people, like I tattooed them when they were 18 or 20 or 40 or whatever. And so now when I'm looking at clients, I'm no longer saying like the importance isn't how far booked out I am. The importance is what the value of the relationship with that client is going to be. And this is going to sound really tacky and capitalistic or whatever, but I'm looking for people who are going to spend when you come to me for a full sleeve, I'm thinking I'm going to do your whole body. Right. So we're elevating it from like a $5,000, $6,000 relationship to the lifetime value of by the time we're done tattooing you in 10 years or 15 years, you're going to drop $15,000, $20,000 with me. And so I am investing in you as much as possible so we can have that relationship so that I don't have to keep. And what is the number one rule of marketing? It's more expensive to get new clients than to keep the ones you have. And so I think as this young lady progresses and grows, and anyone who's in that position who's like they're getting it when it's hot, the next thing to think is like, who do I really want to work with? Start thinking about that and start writing it down. And even if that means writing down people's names on a little piece of scratch paper, it doesn't matter. So yeah, what does that sound like to you?
Yeah, I think that's great. And another thing that we try to get people to actually think about is the lifetime value of a client. Kind of like you're pointing at, not all clients are created equal. And the ones that usually want the cheaper, smaller stuff are usually the worst clients. They want the most customized, like hey, I got $50 and I want you to redraw this 17 times until it fits perfectly on my ankle, versus someone that's going to spend 3 to 6 grand is like, you're the artist, go do it. One thing I did want to touch on real quick with the past client stuff is there's a huge opportunity that usually gets missed in almost all tattoo shops we talk to. When somebody has to fill out a waiver, you're collecting all that person's information, their emails, their phone numbers, their name, blah, 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 birthday, stuff like that. One of the best things a shop can do, especially when it starts to get slow, is start using that past client list. You can send them out a text, letting them know you have openings, stuff like that. But that also raises the lifetime value of a client. Like you said, the easiest, it's cheapest to get somebody back in the door versus bringing in a new client. And the easiest way to raise that lifetime value is to bring that client in more often. People will use pretty much any kind of excuse to get tattooed. Like it doesn't need to be a big thing. But moving from something like paper over to an online waiver, something like that is a huge thing that in the end, if used correctly, which it should be, it is a really good way to raise the lifetime value of a client for anybody, shop or artist. That's kind of
So
a
let's
side
talk about
tangent,
that.
but
No, you're right on target. So what we're talking about is the life cycle of a client, right? And we're talking about how to keep the retention value of the life cycle of a client. Meaning, they don't get tattooed by you and you never see them again. I mean, what do we always hear in tattoo shops? Call me when you want another one. And then you're sitting by the phone like a broken-hearted lover, like, why didn't anyone call me? And then you see them out in public with a new tattoo, and you somehow think that equates to some type of personality conflict or whatever. The reality is that you weren't in front of them anymore. And you get about 30,000 pieces of information bombarded at you every single day. And if you're not, the average client gets 30,000 pieces of information bombarded at them every day. And if you're not in front of them when they're ready to make a decision, they just don't remember. How many times have you gone to a restaurant, same restaurant, ordered the same thing, and then when you're done, you're like, oh, I forgot to try the sushi place, right? Or there's some restaurant that you wanted to try and you just forgot, right? Because you have routines and you have rhythms. And I think what you're talking about here is basically trying to figure out how to keep the conversation going, having a good email campaign. And I want to touch on this really quick because one of the things you said was let them know that you have an opening. And I think that's okay. But I want to point out that when you're actually creating a relationship, you just want to say hi. And that's it. And your email should offer some type of trust and value. And I think that if you concentrate too much on like your touch points on past clients, it's like, I'm ready. That could have a negative connotation. I think what's really happening is they want to remember you. They want to know that you're still succeeding. They want to know all the good points, and you want to know about them too. So if you know that they just got married because you see it on Facebook, it is absolutely okay to say congratulations. It's absolutely okay to like your clients' photos. It's absolutely okay to say congratulations on any benchmark or milestone in their life. I think this is where people think that there's like, oh, I don't want to cross any boundaries. Dude, you tattooed them. They're remembering you for life. That boundary has been blasted through, and I think that's where people kind of, they stay on their side of the street, so to speak, right? And then the other thing too is by staying in their inbox, what's so important about that? It's the fact that they don't unsubscribe. Right? You can see how many people unsubscribe from your email list. I have a 0.7% unsubscribing rate right now, which is phenomenal, right? I think like 5% you should start getting worried, and 10% you're like, oh man, people hate you. And so when I see, I'm just going to break this down really quick and make this really simple. I built a chopper almost 20 years ago, and I used a company called TC Brothers to get a lot of my parts. Of course, you buy something from a company, you go into their data bank, and they data mine your email, and then they end up sending you an email on everything they do from that point on. Guess what? I've never unsubscribed. You know why? Not because this is I don't need them anymore. It's because seeing that email reminds me of building that chopper and how much fun I had. When they see an email from you, they're not like, well, I don't need tattoos right now, so I'm deleting this. They're like, oh, I wonder what Matt's up to. you know? And then what happens? Even if they're not going to get tattooed, when their friend says, I'm thinking about getting tattooed, your name was just in their head when they read the emails this morning, even if they didn't open it. So that's another reason. I think the point is this, is in the phases of life cycle of tattooing, you need to continue the conversation after the transaction's over
Mhm.
and keep that going, you know?
Yeah,
That's
staying
what I'd
top of
say about
mind.
that.
Staying top of mind is huge. And that's one thing with email is, typically, we'll tell a shop, hey, do a newsletter once a month, something like that. And it's not so much to get people to read it and expect them to come in, but it's so you stay top of mind, so they remember you. And then there's stuff like if somebody fills out a waiver, you have their birthday. Set up an automation so they get a text from the shop on their birthday saying happy birthday. Just small things, kind of like you're talking about, um, make a huge difference. It isn't always about the sale 100%. Like if you keep hounding somebody with text or emails saying, hey, we have an opening, something like that, or hey, we're having a flash sale, or we're doing 10% off or something like that, like you're going to burn that person out pretty quick. But if you use it, like, let's say the shop is super slow, let's say it's December, and you're using it once or twice a year to actually get people in. I think it's Gary V in his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, like offered, just keep saying hi, just keep in touch with them. And then when you really need it, putting some kind of offer in front of their face. And that's big
5 to 1, right?
about that. Yeah.
Give them 5 things, ask for one.
Yep.
I mean, even on my Instagram, or if you go to my Instagram, if you end up in one of my, I got a couple different email campaigns I use. It's nothing but offering value. If you like Chris Do talks about this a lot, about offering as much value and trust as possible, because then when you do release a product, people you're not like, well, who's this guy? Who's this guy to tell me about this master course or whatever it is? It's like, oh, it's a guy that's been giving me free advice for 3 years now
Mhm.
on YouTube. So that's killer. Yeah. In your side of things, what are a lot of the pain points? People don't call people like, so I'm a business coach and I work with people one-on-one, and you're into marketing, and people don't call us until they're in enough pain to pick up the phone and say, I need to change something. Like no one calls us and says, things are going great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are some of the, like the pain points you see I'm curious, with tattoo artists when they're finally ready to use your services? And then what are they skeptical of?
Well, they usually call us when they're getting slow. And I can tell you when you need marketing to work right now is the worst time to start marketing. Honestly, the best time is usually when you guys are busy because you're going to get that kind of momentum going forward. Like if you're like, hey, it's December 7th, like we need people in the shop tomorrow. You're like, well, it's probably not going to happen. We can get stuff moving pretty quick, but that's a bad time to start. But usually it is, yeah, shops are slow. Hesitance is people have run Instagram ads, or shop owners and artists. They've run Facebook ads, they've run Google ads, they've hired companies to do it for them, and they've seen it not work. Now, usually the issue is one, if they use a marketing company, like they have no clue about the tattoo industry. They don't know their ideal clients or their avatars. And that's why we're able to be so successful, is because like that's all we work with. I've been getting tattooed for 19 years. We know the industry pretty well and the type of people that shops want. Like if you're a street shop, you need a very different type of client than somebody that's a one-man studio that only does geometric in Miami, So things can't, like, there's no one size fits all for every shop. Or they've tried to do it themselves. And I can tell you, if you're running Google ads, you're probably in what's called smart mode, which lets Google make 80% of decisions, and it sucks ass. And if you're boosting posts, you're also losing out on about 90% of the targeting options that you would get out of the Meta Business Manager. Like you can go into Meta Business Manager, upload your past client list, and then Meta will find people that look like your past clients, show them the ads, and then you can refine that even further and have it only shown to people in like the top 50% of income, top 25% of income, top 5% of income, so they can afford those bigger pieces. But it does take some work. It's not like boosting a post is extremely simple. It's not like Google Smart Ads that are made for people who don't want to go in there and dive into it. So there's pros and cons. Like we had a shop hire us to come in and give essentially teach them how to run meta ads. And we got a call from them the next day. It was like, it was super helpful. We really appreciate it. Nobody wants to spend the time doing it. Can we just hire you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But it's like, it works. I mean, that's the thing. And you don't need an insane budget or anything like that. Like, when done right, especially with Google ads, like, you can beat out shops spending 10 times what you can, just how Google works. Like, if they think your ad is built better and more relevant, they'll show it above people willing to spend 3-4 times the click because they think your ad is going to get clicked more, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
It does make sense. I do think that our conversation, though, is probably so heavenly it's no earthly good to anyone.
Yeah.
Like that kind of that's just something my business coach reminds me of a lot. Is just, Matt, you got to bring it down to earth.
Yeah.
So if you could explain it to me one more time, like I ate crayons, like my friend Ben likes to say a lot. What do you think? Give me 3 reasons why tattoo artists, because I see this a lot. Tried it, didn't work, and then they're like, they don't care anymore, right? Me personally, as an entrepreneur, I have spent, I bet last year I spent $20,000 on things that didn't matter, right? I didn't know they didn't matter. I didn't know they weren't going to get me the results. I'll never have to spend that money again.
Yep.
But they led me to things that did matter eventually. It was a very indirect route. So I think when it comes to tattoo artists, we want to, it's an A to B. It's like, does it work or does it not work? I want to know that the hard-earned money I'm giving you is going to work. And that's such a weird thing with guarantees when it comes to marketing. So let me backtrack a little bit. How do you explain that to people because I know that how do you explain marketing when it comes to ads to people that it's a little bit simpler? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah. So essentially what we do is just show your work to more local people that look like your past clients. So it's people that are already interested in getting tattooed. They have tattoos. They've shown some kind of interest, like been in a shop or something. And then we just show them your ads. And typically, depending on what study you look at, about 3% of the population is ready to buy it at any one time. So that's who we're targeting. But we also want to collect that data of that other 7% that's going to buy in the next year or so we can do that retargeting, sending them emails, stuff like that.
Okay, you just hit something really smart. And that is that only 3% are ready to buy then and there, right? So that would be a transaction that's ready to rock and roll. So let's go ahead and start in the beginning of the conversation. I talked about acquisition phases. And I think this is the part that tattoo artists they are not patient enough. So when does the acquisition phase start and what is it exactly? An acquisition phase is first awareness that you exist. Second part would be the consideration of getting work by you. And the third part's the commitment of actually doing it. And I would say that the commitment part isn't until you're actually tattooing them, not the deposit, not the conversation or the consultation. But I think once you actually start tattooing them, they have every right to back out of that situation. So I just want, if anyone's listening to this, I don't want them to get so frustrated because it's not like they put an ad out and you're not seeing that instant gratification from the ad. I want you to know that when you put that ad out, the first time they hear your name, that's awareness. I didn't even know you existed. That's amazing. Then they're going to start doing consideration. And I think this is part that I try to push the hardest is, what are they going to find when they Google you? What breadcrumbs have you left? If all your nuts and berries and all your good stuff is stuck on Instagram, who cares? It's just one part, right? Like, you're one of many people. But even me doing this podcast is one more plug for me on the internet when you search my name when this comes up. So I would recommend getting on as many podcasts as possible, creating as many websites as possible. I have 4 websites. I only need 1, but I have 4 because I make a new website for each adventure that I do. It's not that hard to do. So now my point is that when you Google me now, there's going to be at least maybe 10 relevant, like within the last year, things that I've done. They're going to come up in Google. So you should have the same thing. And if it's not out there, you need to create it. I mean, just doing like um, something with your local restaurant, and then they put you on their page. Now that somehow
Mhm.
turns into Google,
Yep.
right? And so when they go through that acquisition phase and they're still considering, that consideration phase can be 2 years long, so you got to keep being Johnny Appleseed and putting all that stuff out there, right? And so then when they go into the consideration phase, they reach out to you. And I think that's where people screw up, is they think that the minute they open the door to your shop or the minute they call you, they're ready to go, right? And we process them like fish or like a factory.
Yeah.
And they are still in the consideration phase. They want to know that everything that they saw on the internet is backed up by you in person. Is the person I saw on the internet hold the same values and principles as the person that's in front of me? So they're still in that consideration phase. So yeah, be your authentic self. Don't put things out there that aren't you. All that stuff. So I would just add that part to it too when it comes to, because you triggered me. I hate that word, trigger. Someone said it 3 times. I was in a conversation earlier and someone said it 3 times, so now I'm saying it. But it resonated with me when you said the 3% are ready to go. What I'm hearing is, yeah, but that means there's 97% of the other people that you have a chance to cultivate and make them even more. Because think about that 3% that's ready to go. Like, what are they? Are they price sensitive? Do they actually know what they want? Are they just ready to jump? What about the person that's playing the slow game and watching you, making sure that you're the right pick?
Yep.
That's the person that you're going to want to work with too, right? Because they understand you more because they've done their quote unquote research on the internet.
Yep. And people only usually think about that 3% and neglect the 97%. And that's, again, it's not so much about what's going to happen tomorrow. Obviously, that's important, but what's going to happen, like, where are you going to be in 2 years from now? We get so focused up on, hey, how am I going to eat right now, that we like don't learn to fish. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
so much emphasis on, making money within the next week, that really the other 97%, which is, I mean, obviously a huge part of the population, is just neglected. Like us, if you come into our like Inklinks, our database, essentially into our ecosystem, like, you're going to get emails from us once a week. You're going to get a text message for every free webinar we do. You're going to hear about our podcasts. We're going to send you reviews from clients. And again, this isn't all at once. We're not trying to annoy people, but the amount of people that I get, hey, I've been listening to your podcast for like 6 months. Can we set up a meeting and see if we'll be a good fit to work, is huge. It by far outweighs the amount of people that, see an ad and then click on us. And on top of that, since they've been consuming our content for 6 months, they're already pre-sold. They know us, they know what we do. Versus you get on somebody that has just learned about you, like, you have to justify to them why you're a good fit for their company. So it's two very different people. But most tattoo shops, like, they'll try to reach out to somebody once, maybe twice, and then just never touch that again. And it goes into, like, the void of darkness. When there's still, like, if somebody, especially in this day and age, is willing to put in their information, request a consultation, they know you're going to reach out to them. It's not like a secret. But, and this is a whole different subject, but the way tattoo shops do it typically is fairly terrible, especially from like paid ads. Cause again, they don't know, like, and trust you. So, a lot of those people that could have been potential clients, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe next month, next year, are just neglected.
All right. What's the future of tattooing when it comes to this?
Well, we see how much.
Let's say 10 years. It's 10 years from now. You were one of the first marketers. You're having a lot of great conversations with a variety of shops. What is the direction you're seeing tattooing going?
I think what we are doing now with shops is going to be mandatory in 5 years, when the industry is projected to double. That pie is going to get cut thinner and thinner and thinner. And the stuff, like the tattoo industry, even though it's come a long way, is still taboo. But there's more, like, as the industry grows, more and more people are starting to realize, hey, this is an industry people can actually make money in. It's not for, bikers and gangsters anymore. It's literally everybody. So as that industry grows, marketing, client retention, that kind of stuff is going to be mandatory, because in any competitive industry right now, it already is. And that's where the tattoo industry is going. And again, you can like it, you can hate it, but you can't change it.
Yeah, I've been talking about this quite a bit. I've been trying to. I think one of the reasons why jackpot is important is because there's going to be a day and age where if you don't have this stuff in place, you're not going to be able to compete. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to get people with only 5 years experience to be at a competition level at 15 years experience. Because here's my prediction. My prediction is that it's only a matter of time before companies come in and turn all these into franchises. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, they're going to have a smoother onboarding system and a better call center and a better way of doing business when it comes to acquisition phase. They're going to hopefully, well, not hopefully, they're going to take away the pain that clients have right now. They just are. It's going to be call. They talk to me. I felt like I was listened to. We have an appointment on Friday, and I'm going to get a reminder when I show up. I'm going to get a care package the night before on how I need to take care of my skin before my appointment. Like there's just going to be these extras there. There might be an app that reminds them things and gives them pointers, and that app stays with them for their life cycle. You know, just like I just had surgery. I'm able to get on to my portal and talk to my doctor and be like, I don't know, man, I'm a little nervous. And I get a response in 20 minutes. Yep. Like that stuff is real. That stuff, you know, so look for apps, look for onboarding, look for smoother processes. And I think that the outlier shops, the shops that have become institutions like Trader Bob's in St. Louis or Daredevil or Iron Age, just these bigger, like the one that there's big shops in Texas, the ones that have like carved their niche, you know, they're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. But the ones that haven't really implemented true basic strategy, it's going to be a lot harder to stay in business up against these, like, it's going to be David and Goliath style on that street shop level. But like I said, and I had a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day who runs a street shop. Maybe it's a good thing. You know, maybe it will show just how special some of these shops are, and they won't have to share the same limelight because it's going to be one of those things where it's like, they got custom cuts out where you're at, right, Jason? Jesse, sorry.
I don't.
You know what custom cuts? It's like a cheap hair salon. It's like where you go when you got $20. Okay. You know, they're on every corner over around here. It's like, could you imagine going to a custom cuts before your wedding? Like, get out of here. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, like, when we start comparing, like, well, where did you get your work done at? Oh, I got it done by, you know, this common tattoo shop that's in every 80% of all cities. Oh, your expectation is going to be low for the product. Mm-hmm. But like these other shops are going to be really special, and they're going to be able to get away with more because the end result is the experience on that level, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. That's just kind of what I'm thinking about lately.
Yeah, and I would 100% agree. I mean, we work with some fairly large shops, and we work with a couple of franchises, and I can tell you the biggest thing that sets them apart is, one, there's no friction in the onboarding process. And two, yeah, they send out like text notifications, the stuff we're talking about. And again, in any other industry, even at like a mom and pop level, this is mandatory stuff. It's, if you do these basic things, and they all spend money on marketing, that's another part. And they've you know, they have a good system for it. Like if somebody doesn't pick up the first time, or, you know, text them back the first time, they'll continue, you know, they'll put them in a long-term nurture sequence, or they'll continue to reach out every once in a while. But there's also, I know some people are going to listen to this and be like, dude, that's a ton of work. Like, you can automate 98% of what we're talking about. We use a software called Go High Level, like for the shops we work with. If somebody books a consultation, like that person is going to get reminders 1 day before, 1 hour before, or 4 hours before, 1 hour before. If they fill out a waiver, they're going to get a text the next day saying, hey, if you had a great experience at our shop, will you leave us a review on Google with a link to their Google My Business? It's an amazing way, because no artist wants to ask for it. They feel awkward asking for reviews, but it's an amazing way to start killing it on Google, in your Google My Business. We have an AI bot right now that uses ChatGPT 4 Turbo. It, like, people go into the shop asking for the bot by name because they think it's a human. Like, I've never had anybody say, hey, are you a bot? And like, We use it for a lot of shops. But the thing with it is it will reach out within 1 minute. So that person still has their phone in their hand after filling out that form. It will build reports, not like overly friendly, but it's more friendly than almost any front desk person I've seen. They'll actually ask them about their tattoo and like say it's a cool design or, something along those lines. And then it will ask them if they can come in on the weekday or weekend and book them, look at a calendar so it knows when to book them. And then that person will get reminders. And this thing works so well because it reaches out so quickly. If that person doesn't respond, we'll send them 7 texts over the next 5 to 7 days, depending on where they're at. And you'd be amazed at how many people respond to the 4th text, the 5th text, the 6th text. Like they put in their information and then, they had to go pick up their kid or their baby started crying and then they just miss it. And eventually though, like people give up after 1 or 2 touch points. The amount of replies we get to the 4th, 5th, 6th touch point are
right.
It's got to be at least 40%. So
yeah, I think that the tattoo artist has this guilt about what they're doing. I don't want to bother people, and that is bye.
Yeah.
I mean, that you can't live like that, this is a whole nother conversation too, but yeah, I love AI. I love automation. We just deployed our first bot on the Jackpot page. It's actually outward facing.
Nice.
So it's a very simple one. I think it only can hold 25,000 characters in its knowledge base. So it's not nothing too crazy, but yeah, we use it. And I would say that Go High Level is a very competent, all around, robust, can do everything program. And when I tell people they need a CRM or a client relations management system, if you're not ready for that, if you're not a big system, a big company, or you ain't got 10,000 emails, dude, start with just a notebook and a piece of paper and start tracking all your clients by writing pertinent information down. So start somewhere. That's if you don't just wing it. Don't let all their existence live in some obscure file in a Procreate drawing. Pull it all out and get it all out in front of you so you can see it, But easy plug. I do have a whole course on this inside of Jackpot of how to make your own CRM and what it all means. So Here's my shameless plug for that. Yeah, but we could do a whole nother episode just on AI.
Yes,
I swear.
I would actually like to do that at some point because it's just a tool. It's just a tool to help. One thing I did want to say kind of on that last thing you were mentioning is if you don't want to spend $100 a month on a CRM, which again, different conversation, but the amount of money I guarantee you it will make you just by like reminding people of stuff is worth more than $100. But you can use something like Jotform to collect people's information. And with Jotform, you can get up to 100 free waivers per month. So if you're a single artist studio, you're a smaller shop, that's a way to do it for free. Just fucking do it though. Like that, the amount of gold sitting in your past client list is insane. And almost no shops use it. Matt, I know we're coming up on an hour. Where can people find you? Where can people find Jackpot?
So if you go to jackpotcoaching.com, you're going to get some more information about it. And you can sign up there. We use a Circle app, which is I think Ryan Roy uses it. A couple other companies use it. And so I think a lot of us that are doing these things, we're all talking to each other and trying to figure out how to create an ecosystem that is friendly. So if you're in the Fireside Network, if you're with Ryan Roy or whatever, we want to cross-pollinate all of our memberships. So we're in Circle. It's really easy to use. If you go to jackpotcoaching.com, you'll be able to get more information about it. Also, you can follow me. It's a Matt _Hodel, HODEL _tattoo. And you get a lot. You can DM me, dude. I'm so open. You can DM me. I'll give you my phone number. We can talk. I'm not unapproachable. So you can find me that way. And then if you just want to email me, it's matt@jackpotcoaching.com. And I'm basically doing my best to leave tattooing better than I found it. And I was set to retire I'm almost 50. I'm set to retire in 6 years. And I was getting ready to walk away from tattooing, just leave it to the young generation when it hit me that I've got to do something in the last 5-6 years to give back. So this is me giving back. I'm not doing it because I don't want to talk to people. So yeah, call me, reach out to me, DM me, email me. I'm here for you, and if I can't help you, I'll point you in a direction that will, I'll send them to you for marketing.
Awesome, Matt. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. That was an awesome conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jesse. I appreciate it.